Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the April Mountain West Capital Network Business Forum. We're excited to have everyone join us this afternoon and look forward to hearing from our keynote speaker, Weston Lunsford, the CEO of Dental Intelligence. We'll turn the time over to Weston here in a couple of minutes, but just want to start the meeting with a few just brief announcements for the Mountain West Capital organization as a whole. By way of first announcements, we're about 1 month out for the annual Deal Flow event. That is scheduled to take place May 20th. I think that most of you, if not all of you, have received the email blast that went out earlier today for that event. Really excited for this annual event. We have Ryan Smith is going to be our keynote speaker. As most of you are aware, there's been a couple of interesting things that have gone on in Ryan's world over the last year or so. So we look forward to that. Just want to make sure everyone is up and registered for that, and then spreads the word virtually through your networks, LinkedIn, and other avenues. Next announcement is July 8th, which is not too far off, even though it sounds like it's far off. We are excited that this year we are going to be able to return to our in-person golf tournament. So that will be taking place, like I said, July 8th at Thanksgiving Point. I believe all of the foursomes are sold out, but there may be additional opportunities for sponsorships. Maybe Sherry gives me a nod. But we are looking forward to that. We're looking forward to having that in person and seeing everybody get out in July. Just a reminder to the group as well, May 1st, the applications for Utah 100 will be available. You can get those applications at utah100.org or on mountainwestcapitalnetwork.org. Before we get started, I want to just thank Caitlin and the Now CFO team for their hosting of this. They're providing the virtual platform and content, and without them, this would not run nearly as smoothly as it has. So we are extremely grateful for their willingness to do this as well. Before we turn the time over to Todd Leishman of Denton's, Durham, Jones, and Pinnegar, I'm excited I got that right. Still trying to get used to that. But no, we're excited for Todd. They are the strategic sponsor for the event. Before we turn the time over to him, just kind of give a little bit of an overview of how the program will run. Todd will be introducing our keynote speaker, Weston Lunsford, and then as Todd is introducing Weston and as Weston is giving his presentation, if there are questions that arise, please feel free to send your questions via the chat function. We will be monitoring the Q&A platform, and we'll have time for that at the end of the presentation. Also, for those that may have individuals that you know that would like to view this will be available online afterwards at Mountain West Capital Network's YouTube channel. So feel free to reach out to us if that's something that you'd also like to view. So having covered the announcements, I will turn it over to Todd Leishman, President and Chairman of Denton's, Durham, Jones, and Pinnegar. Todd.
Thank you. Good to see everyone via Zoom today, and appreciate the opportunity to be here at this Mountain West Capital Network monthly forum. My name, as was mentioned, is Todd Leishman, and I'm currently the CEO of Denton's, Durham, Jones, and Pinnegar. That's a new name for us and a new logo, but we're still the same group that has been in Salt Lake for about 30 years, and it's been about 6 months since we joined Denton's, which is the world's largest law firm by head count. There's about 12,000 plus lawyers that work in our organization around the globe. And we're very excited about that, but still looking to greet our longtime friends in Salt Lake City, which includes the people on this call. So I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to be here today, very appreciative of the work that Mountain West Capital Network is doing and has done for a very long time in our community to give us opportunities to talk about and highlight success and how to learn from each other and how to be better entrepreneurs and business people. So it's great to be here. It's now my great privilege to introduce today's speaker, who is Weston Lunsford, who is the founder and, or at least the co-founder and the current chief executive officer of Dental Intelligence, which is a Utah County, Lehigh-based technology company. It's a SaaS company that operates in the healthcare industry with a great product offering and an absolutely tremendous group of clients. This is one of the many great success stories in our business community and in the technology community. And Weston's been the driver of much of that. And it's been my privilege to know him over about the last 5 or 6 years. We've been able to work a little bit together, and I've really been able to learn a lot about their company and to see what a gifted leader he is and an inspiring entrepreneur. And so I'd like to welcome him here. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to hear the story of how this great company has come together and some of the twists and turns that it's undergone in its still emerging success story. And we look forward to it. So Weston, greetings and thank you for being here. And we look forward to hearing from you.
Hey, thanks, Todd. I appreciate it. And nice to meet all of you guys. Hopefully we can connect either on LinkedIn and maybe grab lunch, or I'm always intrigued by entrepreneurs. I'm guessing that we're full of a bunch of founders and CEOs and maybe a few other executives here from companies. And we definitely can support and enable and feed off of each other. So thank you for this opportunity. Looking forward to sharing my story with you. Hopefully today you'll be able to find a few things that are of value to you. I've been asked to bring a slide deck in, and I'm not going to do that. I mean, I may go to it every once in a while, but I wanted to really just have more of a candid conversation with you. And I shared a little bit earlier with the Mountain West team here that I was probably going to be more vulnerable than some of the CEOs that they brought on here and founders. And hopefully that's okay with you guys, because to me, it's not all roses. So there's a lot of hard things going on. In fact, just by maybe a raise of hand, and you can raise your hand in Zoom if I don't see your video, but who's read the book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things? Has anyone read that book? Couple heads are being nodded. For any founders, I would strongly suggest you take a look at this book, but I want to read one little section of this before I get into my story, because I want you to understand that I feel like I know what you're feeling as you're starting to shape out a company, as you've grown a company, and as you continue, maybe it's your second or third or fourth company. This, for me, Dental Intelligence is my third really successful company, and it's this same feeling that I'm going to read right here that was shaped out by Horowitz, the author of this book, is exactly how I feel, and you have these ups and downs on this, and so I want to read this. But he says, he calls it the struggle. So any of you that have read that, you're going to love reading again. I probably read it once a month because it reminds me that I'm human and that it's okay to have a struggle, even if you're leading an enterprise. But it's called the struggle, and it says, this is how he wrote it. Product has its issues. They're very difficult to fix. The market is not where it was supposed to be. Your employees are losing confidence, and some of them have quit. Some of those who have quit are quite smart and have other remaining ones wondering if staying even makes sense. You're running low on cash, and you have slower than forecasted performance. Makes you feel like the rate that raising money is going to be difficult, if not impossible. You lose a competitive battle. It makes you think that your product is not good as it should be. You lose a loyal customer to that same competitor. You lose a great employee. The walls are feeling as if they're closing in. Where did it go wrong? What is happening? Why didn't the company perform as envisioned? Am I good enough to do this? The struggle is when you wonder why you started the company in the first place. If you guys all be honest, I'm guessing you've all asked yourself that question every once in a while. It's when people ask you why you don't quit and you don't have an answer for them. The struggle is when employees think you're lying and you think that they might be right. The struggle is when food loses its taste. The struggle is when you don't believe that you should be the CEO of your company, that there's someone better that can run this thing than you. It's when you don't know that you're in over your head. It's when you can't hear a word that people are saying because all you can hear is the struggle. The struggle is when you want the pain to stop. The struggle is unhappiness. The struggle is when you want to go on vacation to feel better, and then when you do, you feel guilty for leaving. The struggle is when you are surrounded by people, but you still feel alone. The struggle is not failure, but it can cause failure, especially if you're weak. Most people are not strong enough. Every great entrepreneur has gone through or will go through what is called the struggle. So you're not alone, but that does not mean you're going to make it. In fact, many don't, many give up. Most just simply don't have the perseverance or grit. That's why it's called the struggle. The struggle is where greatness is born from. So I wanted to share that with you because I really, I remember a good mentor of mine and who actually introduced me. I don't know if, yeah, I think you know this, Todd, but Alex Dunn, who was formerly the president of Vivint Home Technology and really helped shape that company over there at with Todd Leishman. And I was neighbors with Alex for years, and funny story with him is we were going to go build in his current neighborhood right now, and we both bought lots together, and then he went and built, and then I backed out on it and stayed where I was at. So sometimes he holds that against me, but he mentored me and he guided me to actually Todd Leishman early on. But one of the things that he told me that I needed to do right at the beginning was to go read that book. And as I was reading the book, and forgive me if I'm recommending a book that has some profanity in it, because it does. So ignore that, look past it. It's only in the first chapter. Once you're through that first chapter, he simmers down, and it's back to really good content. So I don't want you to think I'm recommending you go read this rated R book, because it is rated R in the first chapter. But here's the deal. I was laughing, I was crying. I finally got to this section that was called The Struggle, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm not, that other people can feel this way as they're running and starting a company and going through these really challenging and hard things. And I called Alex up right away and I said, hey, have you read The Struggle? And without even a word coming out of his mouth, he sent me a text with that whole thing written out. And he says, not only have I read it, I wrote it in my notes on my phone, and I copy and I paste that thing and send it to several people all the time. So he's felt that thing. I think all great entrepreneurs are going to go through that and feel that. And I want you to know, as I talk through some of the principles in my story today on what I would say has really driven some crazy success for dental intelligence for myself and for my team members over the past 5 years. It does not come without all of this struggle too. So I'll try to talk about some of those struggles. Todd's even experienced, right, Todd? I mean, you've experienced some of the struggles with me where I'm trying to get him on the cell phone and saying, I don't know how to solve this problem and I need your help with this.
My whole life is struggles, Weston, but yours have been the most pleasant ones to go through, trust me.
Well, good. Hopefully we can always laugh after we get through them all, but I'm just going to back up and just give you a little bit of my story and where I came from. And I think that all great entrepreneurs and CEOs and any successful executive team members that are really trying to drive and perform a team, they really need to understand, leaders and your team members need to understand why you're doing what you're doing, what drives and what motivates you. I had a CPA firm that I started in 2004 in Provo, Utah, with Shaylin Peck, a partner of mine. It was called Lunsford Peck. It's still there, still operating. I've since sold that, obviously, and I'm not working in that firm, but I saw a lot of opportunities working in public accounting. And I saw a lot of broken systems and processes in many of the small businesses that we worked with. Part of those small businesses that we worked with during that time was in the medical and dental field. And I recognized very quickly that there was really no great analytics or business service solutions for this small medical field in this industry. And so dental intelligence focuses 100% on vertical SaaS. We are very aligned with the dental industry, and we have a very clear mission that we want to drive more, and not just more, but even better oral health care. And we have a lot of stats and reasons behind all of that, which I probably won't bore you with today, but I'm going to share some of the early stories of when I was in my CPA firm. We had a consulting division that I oversaw, which was outsourced CFO consulting services. And we spent a lot of time with tech companies. And we also spent a lot of time with medical and dental companies. And the two of those seem completely polar opposite of each other, and they really are. But it's really what helped me connect the dots to identify what was really needed in the industry that I really wanted to have an impact on. And I got a call early on, and one of my founders, Rob Bay, and myself took this call from a prospective client that was referred to us from a consultant in the industry. And he called us up, and his name's Dr. Reed Labrat, practices dentistry in the Park City area of Utah. And he called us up and he said, I need some help getting a practice valuation done. And we didn't do practice evaluations. We did do some consulting, and we could identify where opportunities were at inside of practices, but we didn't do practice evaluations. And we shared that with him, and he said, well, this consultant told me that you guys could help me out. And we said, well, we can help you out, but what's going on? Why do you want to sell? And that's when he got into the story of what was really happening. And this was the first part that really opened my eyes to saying, we can create something pretty impactful here because it's missing in the industry. He shared with me that he had purchased his practice 8 years prior, and that during that 8-year period of time, that this doctor had not taken home more than $80,000 compensation. Now, in dentistry, you guys are graduating with $200,000 to $300,000 of debt. And so it's important that they are able to replace that investment on top of purchasing a practice for anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million. That's another layer of debt that they're adding onto it. And so he was really struggling emotionally with this. And he was working 5 days a week. 3 of those days were in his practice and 2 days were in another practice because he needed to make the ends meet at his home. And he felt people in the community. He literally told my colleague, Rob, people here don't feel like I'm a good dentist. I need to sell and I need to go find a place where I can work and do what I enjoy doing, which is dentistry. And we heard this story and we said, well, look, Dr. LeBrat, we can't really help you with the practice valuation. We're not licensed to do that, but we can take a look at what's going on with your practice and we can help you identify. And at this time, I had kind of a mediocre solution of aggregating data and rolling up information so that we could get some good insights as to what was going on. We built this mediocre product to be able to really help my CPAs and analysts consult with practices throughout the country. And so we hooked it up and we found out very quickly what his problems were. And it was easy to see. We shared that with him the very next day and walked him through what was going on. And these light bulbs started popping off in this doctor's eyes. And we told him, look, if you sell, you're not even going to be able to pay off your practice loan because that's how far he was digressing. And he decided to hold on and said he could hold on for about 4 months. Within 4 months, Dr. LeBrat was on track to take home out of his practice. He was forecasted to take home $212,000 in profits to himself. He finished that first year of working with Dental Intelligence and taking $430,000 out of the practice. So you got to put that in context. 8 years prior, never had taken home more than $80,000, and first year in utilizing information and technology to really help him identify opportunities, he was able to take home over $430,000. This was the first sign to me that we could really have an impact. I was really doing P&L and balance sheet consulting. And this was the first really life-changing impact that I had on a potential client and a customer. And so I started onboarding more and more practices. And I was sitting at dinner with Alex Dunn, and I got a phone call from a practice that was paying me just over a little over $3,000 a month. And when a practice is paying you that, you're in the service industry, or a customer is paying you that type of money, you typically will take those calls. So I excused myself, took a call, came back, sat down with my wife and Alex's wife and Alex, and I was depressed. And they could see that. There was I wasn't depressed as in life wasn't going to go on, but I was discouraged because this Dr. Maxwell Johnson shared with me how much we changed his life, but that he didn't necessarily feel he needed to continue to pay consulting because he understood where he was at, but he still wanted to get my dashboards that we had created for him. And so he wanted a price for that. I didn't know how to answer that because my business was in the consulting world. And I shared that with Alex, and he looked at me, and I kid you not, in front of my spouse, he said, Weston, you're an idiot. And I kind of looked at him. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm losing one of my best clients right now, and you're telling me that I'm an idiot. And he said, if you have people that want to buy your technology component of this, and they don't need your consulting side, you need to shift your mindset on this and turn into a SaaS solution and automate what you're doing for them. And that weighed on me for a few weeks. And after a few weeks, I asked a partner of mine today, one of my COO, Kelly Law, if he would take a look at what I was doing. He was just wrapping up a sell of one of his companies and of one of his telecom companies and a SaaS integrated voice over IP solutions that he sold to a San Francisco company. And I knew he had some time. So I asked him if he could come and just take a look at this. and tell me if this is something that we could turn into a software. And Alex spent some time with him, and then Kelly spent about a month evaluating this, looking at what we were doing for practices, looking at how we were gathering the information. And he came back to me and said, Weston, not only can you do this, but you need to do this. Like, this is going to be impactful on the industry. And so then I invited him to join. Principle number one in any successful organization is finding a good management team that can join you. Even if you can't pay them up front and you're figuring out some way to navigate through that journey, you've got to find team members that you can surround yourself with that are going to really help you shape your business, that have done things that you have not done before. We have to remain humble so that we can stay innovative, because if we think we can do it all as founders and CEOs, we're really lying to ourselves. There's a lot that we can do. But Kelly came in and he decided to start, and he joined without taking any compensation. The first thing that we needed to do is find a CTO or someone that could be very techy to be able to build out what we saw that we needed to build. So similar approach. We found an individual, Mike Conway, that came in, and that's what he did. He came in at no compensation as well, and I gave up a little bit of more shares and equity. But I have to tell you, the only way that these individuals were doing this and walking away from compensation positions is selling them on the vision, what we would be able to accomplish. I remember sitting down with Mike and his spouse, kind of laughing at first, Dana, and she's a sweetheart. I love her, but she had kind of a snark laugh to her when I said that we're going to turn this into a multi-$100-million company over the next 5 years. And she kind of looked at that and said, okay, well, still Mike's priority is here, because this was kind of a side gig that he was doing at the time. And I remember hearing that and thinking, am I lying to myself? Can I really pull this off? Can we really do this? But the reality is it made me want to go and work harder. And so we put together our MVP. We released that, and I'm going to walk you through the story, but I want to get you the whole picture of this. We released that MVP in April of 2015. Today we have SaaS, 100% SaaS revenue. That's all we do. We don't do any other type of revenue at Dental Intel. We're introducing new revenue in the fintech world right now, but currently today it's 100% SaaS. And in that 5-year period of time, we went from no customers to over just over 9,000 dental practices across the country, and in some other countries buying our software solution today, and generating just over $30 million in gross revenue with 86% gross margin. So pretty healthy company. And we grow extremely fast. This year, we'll see a 65% growth rate on top of the revenue that we ended with this last year. And it's gone really well. But there's a journey of where we're heading. We're very confident that here within the next 2 years, that we'll be well beyond the 100 million mark, and especially with some new revenue sources that are coming in. But I want to walk you through a couple things that I've had to go through and weather through in doing this. And I think one of the things that really resonates with me in some of the other companies that I've done as a founder and a few other ones is the concept that there are a lot of successful business owners out there. I mean, there are so many of them, and I interact with them every single day. I stay really well connected with my customer base and even partners that we work with in our industry. And there is a lot of successful business owners, but I see so many of them getting stuck at the 7 figures. And they can't get to that $10 million in revenue, or they can't get to that 20 million or 30 million. They stick somewhere between this $5 and $9 million, and they get stuck and they just can't get behind it. Even when they're working nonstop. I mean, I see some of these people, and maybe even you are in this situation, you're sacrificing time, your health, and even sanity for years. And I've done that same thing. And you have a team, and you feel like they're a good team, but you're still finding yourself micromanaging because you don't feel they can do things as good as you can do, and you're chasing one fire after another. And if this sounds familiar at all, I think I was in this realm for a good period of time. And you know what else suffers when you're in this, when you're spinning like this, is the true ability for you as an innovator and an entrepreneur to have the positive impact that you know you can have on the people around you that's living and breathing in your mind, and not just the people around you, but the people in the community that you're serving. You can have such a huge impact, but sometimes we get in that way without really figuring out how to surround ourselves with the right players. So I want to walk through what I've learned, because I was in that position for a long period of time, just trying to figure it out on myself. And that doesn't mean I didn't surround myself with a really good team, but there were things that I didn't know that I needed to know. And so I first started sharing this with a mentor, and you've got to all have a mentor. It doesn't necessarily matter who that is, but it should be someone that significantly had more success than you have had in business, if that's what you're wanting mentored in. And so my mentor, as I mentioned, was Alex Dunn, and he still is today. I still call him at least twice a week, every single week. Today, I call him, even though he's living in Puerto Rico on some beach. So I called him up and I said, I'm really struggling. This is what I want to do. And I walked him through where I was at. And he said, Weston, you really need an investment because you're going to need some funds to really accomplish off what you want to accomplish. And you have to remember, I was an accountant by trade, so I didn't like to take money and spend money when I didn't see a very clear return of that money just nicely outlined. And so he helped model out this model for me and really look at the business economics of what we can do here at Dental Intel. And he convinced me at that time, and he did have to convince me that I needed to take a seed round. So I obviously was self-funding this thing for about a year and a half. And then after going through this with him and looking at all of the elements of my company, what I needed to accomplish, and really modeling out how that money would be spent, it started to become a no-brainer for me to take some funding. And I did. So I took that money, and I took that actually from Alex and a couple other friends and myself. We invested in, and I then needed to make sure that doing a deal like that, I had to make sure that I had a good team that would make sure that all the documents are in line. And that's when I first met Todd Leishman, actually at Denton's. And he had done some deals, I think, with Alex, I know he has, in prior deals with him and over at Vivint. And so he had to be cautious there and had to get some disclosures and consents agreed that Alex would be willing to have Todd work with me on this structure. And I did, and it was probably one of the best things that I could ever have done, and decisions that I've ever made in moving forward in my company, is getting the right legal counsel behind you, because there's so many different moving pieces. But we put that structure together, and I took a round. And I remember when I took that funding, and it wasn't a lot. What did I take? You remember, Todd, what the amount was? I think it was $2 million between my money in and the other investors that came in. You're muted.
Privilege information. I can't reveal that about a client.
Okay. I think it wasn't a ton, but it was $2 million. And I say not a ton. That is a lot of money. But at first, when I first took that money, I remember thinking, okay, I've got a good balance sheet here of cash now. I can go execute on all these visions. And then I remember going home after that money hit my bank account thinking, oh man, this is a whole different level of pressure. Meaning because I felt like this different layer of pressure that I had to work and get this return back for my investors. And by the way, every one of those seed round investors walked out with 13 times their investment, which was a really good return for them over the course of 3.5 years. So it was a good deal for them. But I remember feeling that crazy pressure, and we grew really fast. And sometimes I've learned too that you've got to slow down in order to speed up. And that was not my mentality, but I know that now. In that first 5 years of running, or 4 years of running, it was just go, go, go. And we tripped over ourselves several times. And I reached another point where, with my technology and what we were seeing in the market, that I had to do some acquisitions, not for inorganic growth, but for technology that we needed to own. And I needed to go and do another round at that time. And so I was sitting in a situation where I could see very clearly what needed to happen in our industry. And if I didn't do it, someone else was going to get it done. But I was also, on the other side of me, not wanting to take more money because I didn't want to dilute. And I constantly played this balance back and forth. And I had these conversations with Todd multiple times too, of saying, when is the right time? And you always have to figure out what is the right time to actually take funding, and why are you going to do it? And I wasn't necessarily ready to dilute, but at the same time, I knew if I didn't get this technology, I wasn't going to be able to create the value that I knew that we could create, both for our customers and for my shareholders. And so I decided to do another round. Now, Alex's money came in 2015, and I didn't get to that point again until 2019, and it was January of 2019. We started working on that deal prior, about 6 months before I started personally going out and flying and meeting with different PE firms. And I didn't hire someone to help me do this. I just decided to take the initiative on myself and to start looking for the right partner. And the whole intention of doing this was for the purpose of purchasing what's called LocalMed, which is an online scheduling technology for patient care. And I knew I wanted that software, and I knew I needed to get some money to do it because it was significantly, it was a significant acquisition and purchase price, and it was going to require some really big money at this time. In fact, that round, we took $54 million between our private equity firm, which I think was out there, but we took that between them and some debt with Wells Fargo, and had to navigate through that. And then again, I felt this overwhelming burden and trying to figure out, well, how do I turn this now into a crazy multiple for these new investors that just came in? But I wanted to share with you a couple other things that I found was really important in finding the right partner. Today, I think that all of us would probably agree finding money is pretty easy. Would you agree with that, Todd?
Well, if you're in technology, for sure, that's, and you have any momentum at all, it's pretty easy to get money. But
Yeah.
You're about to say the key thing, which is it's more important who you get the money from and under what terms than whether you can get the money.
It's so critical to your success, what Todd just said there. I've been fortunate enough to have some really good partners, but there's different needs for money, and there's different reasons why you would want to go grab money. Some of it's for acquisitions, and I did one on this first round. I did as an acquisition, but what I learned, the group that I worked with was phenomenal in helping me with operations and internal functional roles and making sure that we have systems and processes dialed in. And this is K1 out of California. They were really, really good at that. But they weren't the best at helping me integrate another culture into my company. And I hadn't done that before, so I didn't know all of those moving pieces. So I learned a lot from that first transaction with them. But to Todd's point, it's so critical that you, before you take money, that you understand what your needs are, because you should be able to articulate those very specific needs to those potential investors. And either they'll be able to have some good answers that feels good, and everyone looks good on a resume, but you can have these conversations, these management meetings with them, and they'll either have good answers that feel good and it feels right for you, or they won't. And the ones that won't or don't, you should just walk away from them, because really the reality is, and to Todd's point, I was assuming that I'm just talking to tech people, but maybe I'm not. But you're right. In the tech world, if you have a good technology that grows fast and you're bringing on customers, finding money is easy. In fact, I sent out, we just did another round, our Series B round. So we did a C round, Series A round, and a Series B round in this journey. And Series B just closed on December 18th. So I'm really new with these new partners of mine. But when I submitted my deck out, this one I hired an investment banker, we had 102 PE firms respond and say, yes, we're interested. We had to narrow that down internally down to 60 of those people, because there's no way I could talk to 102 PE firms. I didn't even think I could talk to 60. We did, unfortunately, and I would never recommend doing that. In fact, if I was going to do it again, I would change this for sure. It was a long and arduous process. And so, but we hired a banker, AGC, and I wanted to use them because I wanted to make sure that this time I found the right partner. And I felt they could help me because they knew all the PE firms out there. And I was very specific on what I needed for a partner. I needed someone that understood fintech, and I needed someone that was really good at inorganic M&As and JVs. And that type of inorganic growth, because I needed to consolidate a fragmented industry. And I spelled out very specifically what I didn't like about the consolidation that happened with my prior acquisition with my prior firm, and what I was hoping to see in this new one. And I was hoping that really that bank would narrow that down to those players. But here's the reality. The bank wants to make money too, right? Everyone's self-interested. anyone that's read Abraham Lincoln's biography, you'll read a line in there. There's a single human being governing principle that he talks about, and it's that we're all self-interest. So even though I spelled this out to my banker, they heard it, they listened to it, but they still blasted this out to the entire world and didn't narrow that down. I had to do the narrowing down. And that was not healthy for my team at all, because we were dealing with way too many people. What would have been better is, had I known what I know now, is go back to my banker and say, hey, I only want to talk to 20 PE firms. You need to narrow it down to those top 20 firms, because I spent 60 hours on that first run through with an hour management meeting with every one of these guys. And it was a lot. So it's important that when you're looking for an investment firm or an investment bank, that you're very clear with those guys. And then when you're looking at that money and taking on money, that you're just transparent. I felt like at first with the first go around that I had to keep some things internal. And I've learned on this second transaction, which was probably more from the consulting of Todd, just open up and share with them exactly what you're looking for and why you're looking for it. Either they're going to be interested or they're not going to be interested. And I started doing that with all of the PE firms, of being crazy transparent with my fears, with the opportunity, with what I'm looking for. And I was able to shape out exactly the deal that I wanted to shape out. Now, Todd, there was some fun things at the end of it, right? Where I almost walked a few times. It's called deal fatigue. I think that you work through a process and you go through and you get excited about the potential partner that you have and what you're going to be able to do with the new funds that are coming on your balance sheet. This last transaction that I did, you guys, was very unique. In fact, I've been told that there's very few people that have pulled off a transaction like this. I knew I was going to be giving up some control for this next acquisition that I needed to do. And by the way, we took the money in December, and I completed the second acquisition with this new firm already. And we did that in the month of March, and I have 2 others going down here within the next 30 days. And so this new firm, and finding what I needed, the right partner that can really do M&As and help with the integrations, they've lived up to everything that they said they were going to live up to. And I was very specific on those requirements, and they shared what their answers were to those requirements, and they've so far proven that out. And so, but I would not have been there had I not really been crazy transparent about what my needs were. We did a deal on this last one where I wanted to take some money off the table. It was the first time I was really taking any money off the table. Biggest reason for that was not necessarily to minimize my risk, because right now in my mind, I don't see risk for what we're doing. I just see opportunity. But I knew that since I was giving up control in this transaction, where this PE firm was going to be taking a majority of the ownership because of the amount of money that we were going to have to bring in for the acquisitions, that there was that risk of them not liking me. And I needed to protect that risk. And so I did sell 50% of my ownership, but then I also put a significant amount of money on the balance sheet and secured a line with these guys as well to do future M&As. And so it worked out really well overall. But I think one of the war stories that I'd like to share with you to see if you can prevent yourself from getting yourself into, that I ended up in this last transaction that we just did. And I still love the firm, so I don't want to talk negatively about them. But at the same time, it was difficult for me to grasp some of the things that happened. Most of these firms, when you're looking at taking on funding, and this is probably more institutional funding. If it's friends and family funding, it's a whole different environment. And when I say friends and family, it could be professional colleagues and peers and investors. I mean, I've written out some checks now for several companies that I would consider myself friends and family member for some of the companies I've invested in. But when you're taking institutional funds, there is a true principle of deal fatigue, and they know it and they work with it, where they will walk you down a diligence process, and you'll be spinning and spinning and spinning upwards of 20 hours a day to get to a point where they actually say, okay, we're going to do this transaction. But when it finally comes time to the transaction, they're always throwing in these additional asks of you or takes from you. And I had that experience with this, a couple of them. And one of them was really a deal structure change with the cap table on options of going forward. I mean, it was a whole, what'd they take from me? 3.5%. Todd, I think he always tells me not to share details, but they did take 3.5% off the cap table that we had negotiated, where all of a sudden they were going to grant some of those shares to some of their operators in their private equity firm. And that was a hard thing for me to digest. And so we had to work through that. But I think that if I could go back all the way from the beginning, I probably would have been more transparent than I was. And I thought I was transparent. And Todd always articulated this, but it's so important that in that LOI phase, so before you get to writing up the purchase agreement, that that should almost be like writing a purchase agreement, because the time that you spend in going through diligence and the amount of hours that you invest with someone that you're going to be taking money from is oftentimes more than you've spent with your management team in the last 12 months. And I kid you not, like you're just with them all day long, and you're in meetings back to back and doing diligence. And so they know that this deal fatigue starts setting in, that you just want it to end and that it's over. And so if I could go back, and Todd, I don't want to say anything bad about what you did, because you did a really good job. We had an SPA type written out LOI before we decided to move forward with Providence in the diligence phase. But at the same time, there were still things that they brought up in that seller purchase agreement that we didn't cover in that LOI. And so it's so important that you get the right legal counsel up front to make sure that you're dialing up before you dive into any diligence process with a potential investor, that you're dialing in all the specific things that you want to make sure are protected. And guys, there's the things you know that you want to protect and the thousands of things that you don't know. And that's why I think it's crazy important to get the right counsel behind you, or guidance or mentor or legal team behind you, because they've done a thing or two. They know a thing or two. They've seen a thing or two. And I can't even fathom what would have happened had I not had, for example, Denton's behind me in writing out all of the things that they've seen in transactions. So I've learned a few more since this transaction that I would add into my next LOI in doing a deal. And I keep notes on that. But overall, a couple of the things that just to, and then I'll let people ask any questions that you have, but a couple of key elements. Number one, your team members have to know why you're doing this. And hopefully it's more than just to make a buck. I don't know too many successful entrepreneurs that are just purely in it for the money, because there are too many hard things, up and downs, and it's not worth your time and effort for just the money. So, but they have to understand that. They need to know your vision. They need to know what you're trying to accomplish and why you're trying to accomplish it. And I'm hoping that for all of you, there's a purpose and a vision behind that. After that, you've got to surround yourself with the right management team. And that management team will change. I've had to go through some very difficult things over the years in dealing with my management teams and making some changes. And many of you have probably had to do those similar things where you have to lay off a team or fire an executive that was with you from the beginning, or you have to demote or fire a very loyal friend. Those things are hard, but here's what's key. You've got to surround yourself with the right leaders. Right now, I'm bringing on a chief revenue officer and a chief financial officer. I have a chief sales officer, but there's some missing pieces there, and he knows that as well. And so we've got to find the right player that can really help us take us from where we're at right now to the next level. But principle number 2, surround yourself with the right team. Part of that team, you guys, has to be a good support team outside of the company. And so that includes legal, that includes a mentor. I think Mountain West does a really good job of providing that environment here. But it's got to include good legal and a good mentor. If you don't have those things, you're going to be struggling trying to figure the things that you don't know. You're going to try to figure them out on yourself. And the third big element that I would make sure that as you're growing and scaling your company that you take in consideration when you're taking this money is that you really get very clear as to why you're taking the money, and that you're okay vocalizing that. If you're taking money because you want to take chips off the table because you're afraid about the market, then great, vocalize it. You want to de-risk. Most PE firms out there understand that concept. And as entrepreneurs, we have a hard time vocalizing that and saying that because we don't want to scare a potential buyer away. You can still say that and you can still have a complete confidence in what you're doing and how you're going to execute on it and how you're going to create enormous value for them. And when you can get confident in articulating both sides of that out as far as what you really want and taking on money, then you're going to have a much more successful journey in looking for those right partners. So those three things can really help you scale and grow fast. I can tell you right now, I wouldn't have been able to scale without taking rounds. And most of you probably are in that circumstance. There's no way that we would be where we're at today or where we're going to be at in 12 months from today without taking on these series. And I feel like we've done it the right way. I don't want to have a Series E. I don't ever want to have a Series E. But Series B was healthy for us, and Series B is going to lead us to our final transaction here at Dental Intel. So, Todd, that's you probably know more of the journey as well. So if there's anything you want me to add to that, but that's a little bit of my history and what I've been through. But ultimately, you guys, it's okay to struggle. Hopefully you can be vulnerable. Oh, one other thing. Can I share one other comment? Share your struggle and what you're feeling with your close management team. I don't know if I'd share that with the entire company, but the more you can share with them, the more they'll rally around you and want to pick up some of those pieces. It's okay to be vulnerable with them. And that's so important for growth because I've learned when I was holding that, I found myself trying to do a lot of these things. And then when I started sharing some of these struggles that I was feeling, I would all of a sudden have Tenley say, hey, I've got that. Let me take it. And all of a sudden, not only does she got it, she's doing it better than I was doing it. So make sure that you're sharing your struggles and your vulnerabilities with your team, not in a way of telling them they're not picking up the slack, but in a way of saying, I'm struggling here and I don't know how to deal with it. What are some of the thoughts? Because most of them will rally around you and grab that and take that off your shoulders. So it's been very helpful for me too.
That's a great job, Weston. Thank you for those comments. The chat box is lighting up and we have way more good questions than I can possibly moderate to you, but let me just see if I can consolidate a few of these things into one or two parting shots and questions. First one is about people, and you've talked in your comments about the importance of people as being a core principle for you. And I can say that having watched you, I know that you are focused on people, but the question is basically this. You are the founder and the CEO of a technology company in the very heart of one of the few true technology hubs outside of Silicon Valley. And yet you talk about people. How do you strike the balance between emphasis on technology and emphasis on people? And what have you learned, the good way and the bad way, about this process of actually choosing your team around you? You've said it's important to get a good team, but can you give us any comments about exactly some factors you've used and also just your general emphasis on people? In addition to technology?
That's a really good question. When I first started, my number one purpose was to build the technology that would best serve. That was my number one mission, that would best serve my customers. And it was all about my product and all about my technology and the outcomes that my customers were having in using that technology. I think it hit me when we finally moved out of my startup phase. And I'm still, in my mind, I still am in startup. So it's hard for me to say move out of a startup phase. But when I moved out of really my brick and mortar building that I started in, which is where my old CPA firm was down in Provo, to this new building that we're in today. And I got all the furniture built out. And I had my org chart sitting here in front of me electronically. I use an org chart where I could see all the people. And at that time, I had 62 team members when I moved over here. And I felt this overwhelming responsibility to their success. I don't know how to describe it other than there was this turning point for me emotionally at that moment. It was just kind of like these milestones started getting reached. And when I really started thinking about those people that were really helping drive my purpose and vision for the industry and the product, that actually rose above my product. Now, some people are probably thinking I'm crazy for even saying that, but that's where I'm at today. I don't think I was there to begin with because I had to have the right product there to be able to create the solution that would really allow for me to hire team members. And we all know that job satisfaction hinges on the quality of relationship they have with their leaders. Absolutely, it's the number one core principle of job satisfaction is the relationship that you have with your people. Yet in today's rapidly evolving 24/7 workplace, and it really is, I mean, we're so connected with technology now, we work 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. I mean, it's insane what we do. And it's so important now more than ever, I think, to make sure that you have that good connected relationship with your team members. That is my number one focus here at Dental Intel. In fact, I have HR reporting directly to me now. It didn't used to report to me. It used to report to finance, but I took that because I know that if my team members are happy, and I'm not perfect here, you guys, there's a lot that we need to do as an organization, but I have really learned that if I can make sure they're happy, that they're connected, that they feel driven, that their purpose is being fulfilled as far as their growth is concerned, that my customers and my product is going to take care of itself with their innovation. And I've seen that happen. And when I made that shift, when we moved over here, which has now been about 3 years ago, that's when we really started to scale, when I decided to invest more into my people. And investing in your people, guys, doesn't mean you have drinks and you have food and you have all these nightly activities and pool tables and ping pong tables. Sure, we have that. But I'm telling you right now, they don't care. That's just a nice perk. What they care about is that you care about their success and their growth and their contributions to your ultimate vision. And if you can get alignment there on how they're contributing to that, the rest of your organization is really going to take off. Your product's going to take off. So I would say to me, Todd, right now, it's number one. Human capital is number one for me.
Great comment. Let's talk about this now. One of the things that I personally witnessed and was really proud of is your COVID response. Do you have any thoughts about now you're a year into this, what happened, what you liked, what you didn't like, and then looking forward, what do you see in the future in terms of your preparation for growing in what's about to happen?
Yeah, I probably have some unpopular opinions on this as far as what the future looks like, but here's my feeling here. COVID was really hard for Dental Intel. Our industry, like many industries, was closed down for 3 months. The CDC came out and said it was unsafe to perform dentistry, which is crazy, right? I've got, and that was hard for my customers too. They were now told that this was not a necessary form of business, oral healthcare. I mean, this was a crazy, challenging period for our vertical. And it was really hard for me. I remember early on when this was starting, where I was kind of brushing it off and saying, this isn't going to be a big deal. And then when the announcement came out to close all unnecessary business, and CDC coming out and saying dentistry was one of those that was not necessary, I was like, oh man, we're in a lot of trouble. And it flipped like a switch. In fact, I was in here on a Sunday afternoon. I couldn't even really you're going to get me choked up for a minute now. This is one of those hard moments. But I was walking and pacing back and forth in our space here, trying to figure out what I do, A, for my customers, because they were closed, so I knew they weren't going to be able to pay us revenue, and B, for my team members. And we were well over 150 at that moment. Now we're at 176, I think, today. But I remember that overwhelming feeling of how am I going to navigate through this? And we had to make some quick decisions. So I rallied my management team, who is so good. These guys are so incredible and so supportive of everything that's going on. And it just hit me as I was pacing up and down in here that we had to figure out a way to give confidence and hope to the customers that we serve. And our mission was 100% focused on that we had to innovate and provide solutions for them through our technology that would not just allow them to come back when dentistry was going to open up again, but slingshot back and be ahead of where they were pre their practices having to close doors. And so we came together and said, how do we do this? My team, I don't even know how to describe it. We made a commitment that we were not going to lay off a single human being, that we were going to weather through it. Fortunately, I had the balance sheet to be able to do that at that time, and not all companies were that fortunate. But we had the cash on our balance sheet to be able to do this. And I made the commitment that we're not gonna let anyone go. I'm going to need them when this future comes back and we're open up again. But right now, what I need them all is not necessarily selling our product, not training on our product, not supporting on our product. We've got to help our customers out, and we're not going to charge them to do it. And so we got on the phones with all of our customers and started taking phone calls, and we had a big pivot on helping them understand what they needed to do to cancel their appointments and reschedule appointments, and not just reschedule any appointment, because if they had to get patients back in the chairs, it couldn't be the same patients that they had on their schedule when they closed their doors. They had to prioritize. They had to find patients that were going to be providing the most amount of oral health care opportunity for them to produce higher dollars, those that had higher reimbursement rates with their insurance companies, and those that showed history of paying in a faster time period. And I know that sounds like patient selection, and you're right, it was. Because in order for them to get back to practicing dentistry the way they were and provide the community with that oral health care that they were providing before, they had to get financially secure again. And the way to do that was patient prioritization. Fortunately, Dental Intelligence had the data to be able to really help them do that. And so we were committed to getting these solutions out to all of our 8,000 customers at no cost to them, so that they could immediately prioritize patients, send out a message to them, and allow those patients to schedule. And I'm happy to say that our customer base, they did slingshot right back. In fact, when you look at the overall industry, our customer base rose. And that hard time as a company connected our company like never before. We all rallied together. We had our functional departments before, and I think we were siloed off in many elements. And I'm not saying we're perfect today, but it removed a lot of those silos and really helped us come together and collaborate together and get this dialed in. Today, Todd, we're sitting in a situation where a lot of people are working from home, and I miss the collaboration. So my future is I need my team back. I will have a hybrid method for sure, but it's going to be more of a 3 to 2 day, but we need them back. It worked for a long period of time, and I still see a lot of my team members, especially in the engineers, that are producing really, really well in their home environment. But at the same time, there's a lot of collaboration where if I wasn't with my team face-to-face on that pivot pre-COVID, if I wasn't there with them face-to-face talking to the whole company, there's no way we could have made that pivot. And we're going to constantly be faced with challenges. Challenges are always going to come, and that's the only way that we can grow. And so I really feel like there's an element of this face-to-face relationship. I'm holding on to all of my real estate. At some point, we'll be asking our team members to come back. We voluntarily, right now, we have over 70% of our workforce that is coming in every single day. There's still the 30% that's not there. But I do feel like the future, in order to really drive innovation, growth, and collaboration, we've got to be amongst one another. It's important. Human beings were born to connect. And this type of connection, even though it's nice to see a couple of your faces on Zoom, it's not the same as sitting knee to knee with someone.
That's well said. Unfortunately, for all of us here, except for you, Weston, the time is gone. And
Yeah.
This, in my opinion, is the highest and best accomplishment of Mountain West, because, you know, to really give an opportunity for the business community to interface with someone who's successful and passionate and willing to share is a tremendous opportunity. So thank you so much for taking an hour to be with us. And I'm not going to close this out. I don't know if that's Steve or Drew or who's going to be in charge, but thank you for doing this today, and thanks for setting this up.
Yeah, Todd, I'll jump in. This is Drew. You know, thanks, Todd, for arranging this. Thank you, Mountain West, for putting this together. And of course, a huge thank you to you, Weston. I get a chance to listen in on dozens of these, and there's a lot of common things that come out of it, you know, around principles, around why, and surrounding yourself by good people. But this was one where I really felt that. You know, you choked me up. You made my eyes water. I didn't appreciate that. I haven't done that virtually, but you can really feel it, and it's exciting to see that. And it makes me feel really proud to be in this community of business people that think that way and are thinking more innovatively that way about bringing us all together and doing the right thing and having a why statement. So no wonder you're successful. We're so glad to have our names attached to yours, and look forward to seeing you continue to be successful and partnering in the community going forward. And
Thanks,
last announcement I would say is our next event is our Deal Flow event.